Welcome back to the Spicy Take Sports Podcast. It's been a little while. I'm here with Colton, and it's just us two today because we got baseball playoffs on tap.
October doesn't get much better than that.
I mean, even people that don't like baseball, I'm sorry, even people that don't love baseball, nothing can really beat playoff baseball. It's pretty great.
I mean, I know a lot of people that watch the postseason in baseball and don't watch any regular season games at all, but they'll tune into the postseason. They'll watch the World Series. They'll watch AL and NLCS.
I mean, that was me before the last few years, personally. I mean, I was never really too much into baseball. I mean, when you moved to Atlanta, it kind of got me into it a little bit more. I mean, it lined up the exact year that Acuna comes up. And
yeah, I mean, literally when I moved to Atlanta was the year Acuna started balling out in Atlanta.
That's the first year I started getting into it when you moved there. And then ever since, I mean, this year I literally watched every single Braves game and I've kept up with the other teams in the league too. So, I mean, like I've kept up more with the MLB lately than I have any NBA, which is kind of crazy for me. I would have never said that a few years ago.
I would have never guessed you would have been in that situation to even say that.
Yeah. I've been more, I mean, I think I'm more into the NFL as a total thing, but I mean, as a Braves fan, I'm more into the Braves than I am my Vikings this year. So, I mean, either way, I mean, even with that, I mean, even people that don't watch the regular season, nothing quite beats a ninth inning pressure packed inning to win a postseason series. So obviously super excited for this playoffs. And just a disclaimer, we are recording this at 9:10 on Tuesday night, which is when the Red Sox and the Yankees are playing. We already had our brackets filled out before the game started, so we'll go ahead. So none of this is biased or anything. So
you know what the score is in that game right now? I haven't checked it yet.
Red Sox just went up 2-0. So but it's the third inning. It's not even gonna be.
It's not close to over.
So let's get into it. I mean, obviously, first thing is NL and AL wild card. I mean, since the game's going on right now, AL wild card. I'll start. I have the Yankees winning it. I know they're behind 2-0, but again, it's not biased. But I have the Yankees winning it. I don't see a 2-0 lead holding up to begin with, but not with the offenses that the Yankees have. But my reason for the Yankees over the Red Sox, even though the Red Sox are at Fenway, so you have that home field advantage. Look in the second half, and the Red Sox have kind of fallen off a little bit. They barely snuck into the playoffs, and they were the number one seed in the AL for most of the season before the Rays passed them.
Yeah.
And for me, the Yankees are one of those teams that can be dangerous, extremely dangerous, actually, because if they get hot, they can beat anyone in the league. But they're also extremely wishy-washy, and that the next game they could literally not get a hit. So they're so hit or miss, but that type of lineup can win you series you shouldn't win. But I think they do get this one done. I just don't believe in the Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to win a game or to win, one game away when you're at home. I mean, I think the Red Sox have a big advantage at home. But like you said, they've been in a slump the last couple of months of the season, and they barely scraped by. I mean, they were fortunate they didn't have a Mets situation where New York, was leading the majority of the time, leading the division at least, and then kind of choked towards the end. But I don't know. I think Red Sox will be able to hold that 2-run lead. I mean, I think Yankees, their bats are fairly hot, but I think being at Fenway enough is going to be kind of that extra boost that will give Boston a win over New York.
I see that. I mean, home field matters. Home field matters a lot in baseball. I feel like the wild card, especially, is definitely extremely important. But also,
it's that one game, yeah.
But also, I say that. But going into my NL wild card pick, I also think the Cardinals upset the Dodgers. I mean, it's hard for me to say that. I mean, the Dodgers are at home. The Dodgers do have Max Scherzer pitching, and they have been hot to end the year. But I think part of it, the reason I think the Dodgers could drop it is even though the Dodgers have been hot at the end of the year, I feel like they've come a little bit short of what their goals are. I mean, they did lose the NL West to the Giants, albeit I think it's kind of shows that maybe the wild card situation needs to be changed. Maybe add one more team in each league to where the top wild card doesn't have to go face it. Doesn't have to play in a 1-game playoff. But either way,
Yeah.
even though they did win 106 games, they still didn't win their division, which is nuts. But
That's insane.
I feel like the Dodgers feel like they've left an opportunity out there to win the division, while the Cardinals should never have been in the playoffs to begin with. At the start of September, they were so far out of the playoffs, people were counting them out completely. And by the end of September, they clinched their playoff spot with a week left in the season. When you win 17 straight games, that's pretty nuts. And they're coming into the playoffs. Even though they lost a game from there, they did win 2-3 against the Brewers, and then they did sweep their last series. So they literally are absolutely balling right now. So I think I'd probably take the Cardinals. I mean, would I be shocked at all if the Dodgers won? Not at all. I'd actually probably be more shocked if the Cardinals did win. But I just had a gut feeling about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to agree with you the whole way, but I feel like our opinions are pretty similar, at least with this postseason. I mean, the Cardinals have Wainwright starting, and he's 4 for 5 in the playoffs, which is not a bad record really for a starting pitcher in the playoffs. I mean, a lot of pitchers can't take the heat in October baseball. So to be 4 and 5, I mean, doesn't look impressive if you're talking about regular season stats, but in the postseason, that's not bad. He's a 2.89 ERA in the postseason. That's pretty good.
I mean, baseball wins aren't even that big of a deal. I mean,
Yeah.
Starting pitching, it's kind of messed up how wins work sometimes. I mean, Jacob deGrom this year was 10-8, and the guy had like a 1.8 ERA when he was healthy. Like that just shows. I mean, 4 and 5 in the postseason is still not bad in itself, but a 2.89 ERA in the postseason. Plus, that's not just but he's also pitched a bunch of games in the postseason. I mean,
I was turning my light off I was turning the light off for better lighting. All right.
But I feel like he's not just won playoff games. He's won the biggest of big playoff games. He's won games against. He's won World Series games. He's pitched in the most crucial of games. Yeah. And Scherzer's done the same thing. I'm not saying Scherzer hasn't done the same thing, but look at how both starting pitchers are playing coming into this. Scherzer's last 2 starts have been very shaky. Max Scherzer is one of the best pitchers in the league, don't get me wrong. But in the last month, Max Scherzer's not been as good as Adam Wainwright.
I think the Cardinals are going to win 3-2. That's just my projection for that game. I think it's going to be a pretty low-scoring game. I can see it being like 2-1 Dodgers, and then in the last inning or so, the Cardinals just getting a run or two and snatching it from the Dodgers. I just think it's going to be something like that. I mean, I think both pitchers are going to have games, but in the end, the Cardinals are just really hot right now. And as a Braves fan, I just don't want to play the Dodgers.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, the Dodgers are the most talented team in baseball. They just are. I mean, they got behind a little bit early in the division, and they just haven't been able to catch up to the Giants. They are the most talented team, and they could easily win this thing. But the nature of the 1-game playoff is I really don't believe it matters who the better team is. I believe it's how you perform that single game. And I just think the Cardinals have some sort of juice in them this year for some reason. And I will say that there are a couple cool storylines going into this. I mean, Max Muncy goes out with an injury, which I think is going to be a huge loss for the Dodgers.
That is huge.
But obviously Kershaw's out as well, but Kershaw wasn't going to pitch this game to begin with. But Muncy being out's huge. But it does create a cool storyline. I mean, in what possibly could be Albert Pujols' final year of his career, he goes and plays St. Louis at his first playoff game. So that's quite the storyline. And personally, I mean, if the Dodgers had to win, it would be freaking cool if you could see Albert Pujols hit a homer against the Cardinals to do it. But I don't see it happening, but it would be a really crazy storyline. As a big Pujols fan growing up, my grandfather was a huge Cardinals fan.
Yeah.
So Big Al was pretty much one of my favorite players growing up. So still love the guy to death, but it'd be a interesting storyline, but I still think the Cardinals get it done. I mean, it's going to be a heck of a series and a heck of a game. Like we're doing our podcast on the night of the Red Sox Yankees, which is a great game to begin with too. the fact you get the biggest rivalry in baseball and a wild card 1-game playoff is freaking awesome. But then to go along with that, I'm not watching the Red Sox Yankees yet, but I'm gonna watch the Cardinals Dodgers tomorrow night. There's no doubt. Like that game is gonna be fantastic.
Honestly, I kind of wish it was at least a 3-game series, just because I think
Mm.
1 game isn't enough for these 2 teams. I just think it's that gonna be that exciting of the game, so we want more. But
I mean, getting into that kind of well before we get to the ALDS and the NLDS, while we're on the wild card conversation, do you like the 1-game playoff, or do you think it should for the wild card, or do you think it should be something maybe a 3-game series?
I think when it comes to baseball, I think 1 game isn't enough. I mean, football is a really physically demanding sport. Yeah, that 1 game for the playoffs, that makes sense. But for baseball, 3 games I think is perfect. 3 games for the wild card, 5 for the NLDS, and then 7 for the World Series and LCS. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong, the 1-game wild card is a fantastic spectacle and it makes the games so much fun to watch. They're pretty much must watch every single year. But for me, in baseball, so much can go wrong by just a random bounce. You have a chance to hit a ball 50 miles an hour off the bat and get a base hit versus hitting the ball 110 miles an hour off the bat and lining straight to an outfielder. So I think if you consider that number one, number two, every single series you play all season is 3 or 4 games. You play the same team 3 or 4 times in a row throughout the year. You don't ever just play a one-off game with anybody.
Yeah.
So for us to have a one-off game for the wild card, I think it throws some stuff off. Plus, I think a best of 3 would allow the teams to kind of reset the rotations for the next round. Because these wild card teams are not only in a bad disadvantage for having to play this 1 game to keep their season alive, but then if they do get through, they're down their ace for the next series until game 4 or game 5. And things about that at that time, you're usually playing a team that's better than you. This year, if the Dodgers did make it past the Cardinals, I mean, I don't know if you'd say the Giants are much better of a team than the Dodgers, if they are at all. But in most situations, the 4 or the 5 seed is not as good as the 1 seed. And not only that, but then the 4 or the 5 seed that goes on is going to be out their ace until the series is even over, because the series could be over by then with a best of 5. So I just think a best of 3 would be great. I think that would be extremely intriguing too, because I think that first game you could see teams try to do normal stuff. And if a team falls behind, you could start seeing them trying to chuck multiple starters in a game and all that. But
yeah, they only get 2 days. Like you just said, you made a great point. It's only 2 days between the wild card and the NLDS. So, say for example, Cardinals or Dodgers, either one win. I mean, they're going to be without Scherzer, or they're going to be without Wainwright. So, I mean, those are 2 guys that you need moving forward in the playoffs, and you need to play in those first couple games, especially in the best of 5. You only need to win 3 games. That's pretty much almost already giving you 1.
yeah, you have to rush back one of those guys on 3 or 4 days rest if you even want to play them in the series if you're facing a sweep. So
yeah, if they can even go, I mean.
Now I think that would be a good way to at least kind of take a little bit of disadvantage from being a wild card team, because honestly, the Dodgers being a wild card team is quite a joke. Honestly, the fact that 106 wins is a wild card team, but our Braves at 88 wins are in the NLDS. Like, it's just, I feel like it's kind of funny. And it depends on the division. I mean, some years the NL East is dominant, other years the NL East sucks. Some years the NL West is dominant, some years the NL West sucks. So, I mean, it just kind of depends on the year, but years like this year where I feel like this is when the best of 3 wild card could be extremely helpful.
Yeah, because let's say if the Cardinals do take 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, and everyone can be like, you know what, they just really were the better team in October.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Cardinals win the first game, then the Dodgers win the next 2, they're like, all right, well, a 3-game series is more appropriate because now we saw who the really best team was.
I mean, the game that comes back to my mind about why I think a 1-game wild card is not enough goes back to the first wild card game that the postseason ever had in 2013 with the Braves and in 2012 with the Braves and the Cardinals. Today's the 9-year anniversary of it.
Yeah.
And Chipper Jones's last game. I mean, obviously the Cardinals won 6-3, so it wasn't what decided the game, but bases loaded, 1 out versus first and second, 2 outs is a lot different situation, especially in the 8th inning. And an infield fly rule, not as an infield fly rule come into play, the game goes on protest. Gonzalez goes out there and puts it on protest, and then you get yourself just a thing that no one forgets for years. So, I mean, I think if you had the best of 3 series, if the Cardinals won another game, then you wouldn't have as many Braves fans clamoring saying it was ridiculous. I mean, I think there'd still be your few that did remember it, but I don't think it's the best of 3 series that you have. I mean, then people would at least be able to look at it and say, well, we had another chance to win it. But either way, it was a good discussion. Now let's head to the DS. We'll start with the AL for the DS. You said you have Boston going on. Do you have Tampa or Boston?
Yeah, I have Tampa winning that in about at least 4 games. I mean, at the most 4, maybe even sweeping Boston. I just think, like you said, Boston does get past New York. I think the only reason they win this game because it's in Boston. I just think Tampa has too much experience. Not that Boston necessarily doesn't, but honest, I just have a good. I feel like Tampa is just bound to make another run. I mean, they didn't really lose a ton from last year. They have almost the same team running it back. So it's just like the Dodgers, when you have a team that's really talented and you just made it to a championship series and you're 95% of what you were last year. I mean, you're at least, I think, you're going to win in the ALDS. What do you think? Do you think New York?
I have Tampa over New York. I think it goes 5. I do. I think it goes the distance with that. Part of me thinks that Tampa could sweep them. I mean, Tampa's kind of had New York's number this year. I mean, they won 2 of 3 in this last series of the year, and it didn't even matter at all to the Rays. They'd already clinched the 1 seed. They had no reason to be playing, but they still beat the Yankees 2 of 3 and almost swept them. But without a walk-off, they ended up clinching the playoffs for the Yankees in the last game. So part of me thinks the Rays could sweep them, but the other part of me thinks that the Yankees could pull off the upset because, again, the Yankees are that weird team that if you look at the talent, they are a World Series team. But if you look at the execution, barely make the playoffs. But the thing is, because you have that type of team, sometimes they look like the Baltimore Orioles. Then other times they look like the Los Angeles Dodgers last year. Like you've got 2 complete opposite ends of the spectrum. I could see the Yankees pulling it off in a 5-game series. I'm not going to pick it. I think the Rays do win in 5. But I think it's going to be one of the most entertaining series of the whole playoffs because that matchup is 2 completely alternate, differing styles. You got the Rays who throw out their starters that go 3 innings and then they go to the bullpen the rest of the game and they still dominate. You got batters that wouldn't be good on any other team, but the Rays somehow make them good. But then you got the Yankees who have your Garrett Coles, have got your Corey Klubers, and then they've got your Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stantons. I mean, you've got completely alternate styles, completely alternate payrolls. So that'd be a fun dichotomy for a series, which I think would make it just a lot of fun in general.
Yeah, I think that regardless of, I mean, I can see how New York does have a better chance against Tampa. New York can get past Boston. New York just has hot bats. I mean, Boston doesn't have, their bats aren't nearly as hot as New York. I mean, I saw New York firsthand. They are very talented when it comes to swinging the bat.
I mean, if Boston gets through tonight, I think Tampa probably wins and probably sweeps them. I just don't think Boston's that. I don't think they have the same level of has a ceiling as the Yankees do. And I think for either one of those 2 teams to stay competitive with the Rays, they've got to be playing at their ceiling because the Rays are just that good this year.
The Rays are super talented, and I think they'll make it at least the ALCS. At least.
So now other series in the AL, we got White Sox as the 3 seed against the 2 seeded Astros.
I'm really high on Houston this year. I actually, maybe this is a little spoiler. I actually had them going to the World Series. I just think that they have pitching. I mean, and I don't know. I think there's a few years, they're a few years removed from that whole scandal. I mean, they won it 3 years ago now. Three?
Mhm.
It's been 3 years?
2017, they won the World Series.
Okay, 4 years.
Yeah, they with the bang bang.
Yeah, they did that. But at the same time, I don't know. I have a odd feeling that Houston's going to be able to pull through. I mean, they still have some similar guys that they had. I mean, Altuve is one of the best second basemen in baseball,
mm.
and he's just. I mean, they have guys all over that are going to produce.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know. Chicago just there's not that many people that really jumps out at me for Chicago, at least enough to really
Many games
top
you got?
Houston's roster. What?
How many games do you think?
I think in a 5-game series, I think Houston will win 4. I think they also win 4 as Tampa or Boston. How about you? What do you think?
So I also have Houston. I mean, we're matching up pretty much so far, except for the wild card game. I have Houston. I think whoever wins this series goes to the World Series, and I'm kind of spoiling it. I think that Houston has something to prove. Obviously, this is the first full season since the bang bang got proven.
Yeah.
Also, and they've shown that they didn't need the trash cans. I mean, they've shown they're a really, really good baseball team. They've got really good starting pitching, a solid bullpen. The lineup is nuts. I mean, you've got Altuve, Correa, Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, Michael Brantley, Yuli Gurriel. I mean, you got 3 guys hitting over 300 on that team and a few guys hitting 30 to 40 bombs. Like, they've got an amazing lineup. I mean, Chicago's got a great team too. I mean, they've got one of the best starting rotations in the league. Carlos Rodon getting hurt and not really coming back 100% is not the best, which I think could end up hurting them. You lose your ace, and that could be a big deal. Even if he plays, he won't be 100%, and that could be a big deal coming down the wire, especially when you have to win one in Houston, which is one of the hardest parks to win at in all of baseball. The bullpen's great in Chicago. The bullpen definitely is better than Houston's. I mean, you got Liam Hendricks, who has Cy Young votes as a reliever, and then you got Craig Kimbrell, who had a really good start to the year, struggled a little bit lately, but still really good. Aaron Bummer, one of the best lefty relievers in the league. So I mean, Chicago's, and then they've got Tim Anderson, they've got Eloy Jimenez, they've got Luis Robert, they've got a bunch of guys in that lineup too. It's going to be an amazing series. It's going to go 5, in my opinion. I think Houston wins because of home field. But I do think, I mean, I'll go ahead and get to the ALCS. I think Houston does win, and I think they do beat Tampa as well. I think Houston wins in 6 against Tampa.
Oh, Houston 6. I have Houston 7, which is very close. Our brackets are pretty similar, but by complete accident. But I think Houston just has, man, their lineup is fairly low key in terms of their batting average. I was looking at it the other day, and they have 2 guys that are well over 300, and then they got another 3 guys that are on the edge of batting. That's a little nutty. I mean, I didn't realize how good of bats they had until recently.
They're stacked. I mean,
they're looking to make another World Series push.
And I'll say this, with that kind of lineup, when you're putting those numbers up, I think they've proven they didn't need the trash cans. I mean, I could see why people said that they should lose their World Series ring. I could see that. I think if they prove it today, I think that they may get quiet. Because I think if they prove it this season, that they can go out and win it again, that crowd will get very quiet because they won't really have much of a leg to stand on. But yeah, Houston.
I mean, they go out and win a World Series, and I feel like that kind of negates everyone wanting to take away their 2017 World Series, because I mean they could have probably won it anyways without the whole bang bang. So
I mean, it kind of reminds me of the situation where you had with in the NFL with Brady and Deflategate. People were making a big deal like they wouldn't have won the Super Bowl without Deflategate, despite the fact that they won that game that they were saying it about by like 40. And then he goes out and wins 2 or 3 more in the next like 5 years. And then those Deflategate people started getting very, very quiet because they realized it didn't do anything. So
Yeah, because Brady's Brady at the end of the day.
exactly. So I think you could see the same thing happen with the Astros. I mean, I have them in the World Series, so do you. And I think they're going to be they're just extremely dangerous this playoffs. I honestly feel
Yeah.
bad. I feel bad. And I will say this: I have the Astros in 6 against the Rays, but I do believe that if I think because I chose the Yankees to beat the Red Sox. I think if the Red Sox go on, I think the Rays can beat the Astros. I wouldn't pick them, but I think they could. I think the Yankees, if they play the Rays and push it to 5, you'll see a very tired Rays team because that's a really, really difficult series in the ALDS.
Yeah.
And I know that
Yeah.
I know that the Astros have the White Sox. I think that's going to be a heck of a series, but I just think you have a lot deeper of a lineup in Houston, and you've seen them not only get to the World Series like the Rays have, you've seen them win a World Series. But
yeah, I can see Tampa really. I mean, like I said, I think it's going to go in 7 for Houston, but I can see Tampa really giving them a series, like scaring Houston at times. Honestly, I think just their experience alone is going to take them far into these playoffs. And you see it. You see it in every sport. You see it in baseball, basketball, football. I mean, usually the most experienced teams in postseason usually go the furthest. Not all the time. You'll have your rare occurrences of freakish athletes like Mahomes, but most of the times who has the most experience. And we'll probably get in that a little later for I'm sure, our NL pick.
So
let's hop over to that Giants and Cardinals series.
Giants Cardinals. For me, I kind of flop back and forth. I've done 2 brackets and I've chosen the series both ways. So I don't really know what I want to go with on the record. I'll go on the record and say it goes 5 for sure. I don't think it goes shorter than 5. You got the hottest team in baseball and the Cardinals versus the best team in baseball and the Giants. I think I go Giants. I think the Giants have some sort of like devil magic this year. I don't know what's going on. This team, we kept waiting for them to fall back to what we thought they were. We waited for them to keep falling. We waited for them to do what the Mets actually did. And they never did. And they just kept winning and kept winning and kept winning. And the beautiful thing about that team, I mean, I'm not a Giants fan. I've never really been a Giants fan. Never liked them. But the great thing about this team is you don't have that one superstar. I mean, you got Buster Posey, but before the year, people thought Buster Posey was washed up 3 years ago. Before this year, they thought Brandon Crawford was washed up 3 years ago. Before this year, they thought Brandon Belt was washed up 3 years ago. Like,
the Brandon Crawford's batting .298 on the season. So I mean,
the guy's putting a quiet MVP case up. I mean, and then you go out and you trade for Chris Bryant at the deadline. You've got guys like Darren Ruff who are stepping in. You got guys like Mike Yastrzemski, who I really like that guy. I think when you're the grandson of one of the greatest players of all time, I mean, it's pretty good genes, but he's played really well this year. You have Lamont Wade Jr., who was a backup before this year that barely ever played in Minnesota. And this year he goes out and hits walk-offs like crazy. He's hit so many. You just got a really, really good team in San Francisco. I don't trust the manager. I don't think Gabe Kapler's as good of a manager as we've been saying. I think what he did in Philadelphia is a lot more what he's like instead of what he's done this year with San Francisco. But who knows? Maybe it's just Philadelphia's a poverty franchise. It could be. I mean, but I do have the Cardinals falling to the Giants in 5. I think the Cardinals could definitely win it. But I just think that depth in the starting rotation as well for the Giants. When you have Gausman, who I would never guess 3 years ago that Kevin Gausman would be an ace. I mean, he was a bottom of the rotation guy for a bad Atlanta team. and 4 years later, he's an ace on the best team in baseball. You got Logan Webb, who is dealing this year as well. You got Desclafani, who's doing really well this year. You've got a very good rotation there. And with San Francisco, with the St. Louis having to use Wainwright in that 1-game playoff game, the fact you may have to wait a little bit later in the series for Wainwright, I think that could end up hurting them pretty badly. And I mean, I don't trust Jay Happ being a playoff starter. I just don't. And that's why I'm going with San Francisco.
Yeah, me neither. And I mean, just the Giants have a good roster. They got 7 guys with at least 50 RBIs in the season. I mean, that's pretty good. Like that's not amazing. Adam Duvall is over 100. Let's not brag too much, but I mean, there's lots of guys here that are absolute studs. I mean, even Evan Longoria, who's been in the league feels like forever now, has hit 50 RBIs in the season. I mean, they just got some older guys that are just producing. I feel like also Posey's been in the league forever. I mean, I know he hasn't, but it feels like it. I feel like I've heard that name for years. Brandon Crawford, 90 RBIs on the season. I mean, that's good. That's a really good season, a really efficient season. But I also have the Giants. I have the Giants winning in 5 as well against the Cardinals. Like you said, I think with Wainwright having to play against Scherzer in that wild card game, essentially is throwing away game 1 when they played the Giants in San Francisco. Just because Wainwright, I mean, he's basically their ace. And when you're a 2 guy, it's big demand to ask to go out there and such a crucial game to take game 1. This game 2 is usually more relaxing game 1.
Yeah, I think if Jack Flaherty is able to pitch for the Cardinals, I know he's coming back from injury. If he comes back fully healthy from injury and is able to pitch in that San Francisco series, they could steal a game. They could steal a game in San Francisco and they'd win the series. I just don't see them winning in San Francisco. San Francisco's been virtually unbeatable at home this year. And I mean, without Wainwright until game 3 at earliest, and then if Flaherty doesn't pitch, it's not looking good because he's still hurt. I just can't see them winning one in San Francisco. I think they probably win both at home, but I don't think they can win one in San Francisco.
Yeah, I agree. Series 1, 2 is San Francisco. They win 2 St. Louis. They'll get those W's and you come back. Yeah, you're not going to win a single game. So good luck with that.
All right, now the series that we're most excited for, obviously, as Braves fans. Braves and Brewers. Brewers got home field.
I have a pretty good feeling about. I mean, just before we start talking about the series itself, I mean, I think the most underlying thing that can sway the series is Devin Williams punching a wall after celebrating winning the NL Central. That's huge. You and I have talked about this. He's usually their guy in the 8th inning. He's usually, like you said, they shorten the series. Him and the relievers. What's the reliever for the Brewers name again?
Hader.
The closer.
Josh Hader.
Josh Hader, right. Him and Williams turn into a 7-inning game. With that said, now it's going to be 8-inning game at least for the Braves. And let's cross our fingers that Will Smith keeps dealing for the rest of the playoffs. I mean, he's had a little, 1.5 ERA, 1.7 ERA in the last month and a half.
1.6 in the month of September.
1.6 in the month of September. It was along those lines. I remember seeing this.
Doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I just can't remember exactly what it was. I remember seeing the stat the other day, though.
It does not feel like it, but he has.
It does not feel like it. I feel like I've lost the years watching him, but I mean, you gotta give him credit. He's played well recently in September. If he can keep that in all of October, the Braves have a good shot. With that said, I think the Braves, if Morton takes game 1 in Milwaukee, the Braves will win in 4. And that's what I think is going to happen. What about you?
So they just announced the Brewers pitching for the first 3 games. We didn't The question was, are they going to pitch Burns game 1 or game 2, and Woodruff, which one? Like they're going to alternate them. They got Burns going 1, Woodruff going game 2, and then Peralta going game 3. I had Braves in 4. Obviously we're both biased here, so everyone take that with a grain of salt. We're not going to try to hide our bias. But just if you look at statistic wise, I think this is the best matchup for the Braves of anyone they could have gotten the playoffs. I mean, the Brewers pitching is fantastic. You got Corbin Burns, who's probably going to win the Cy Young this year. You got Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta, who both have under 3 ERAs this year and really low FIPS as well. That pitching for the Brewers is very, very good. And I mean, you also got Eric Lauer, you got Adrian Hauser as well. Like you just got great arms in Milwaukee. I'm not trying to downplay them. And if you told me this series was going to happen a month ago, I would have chosen the Brewers as a sweep. Like I just, at that time, the Braves pitching was kind of up and down. Even though they had just taken the lead for the division, they were up and down. But kind of the same with the Cardinals of why I think they're going to beat the Dodgers and give the Giants a run for their money. It's the same reason that I have the Braves beating the Brewers. And certain guys start playing well and then your team gets hot going to the playoffs, then it's kind of a crapshoot. And Charlie Morton in his last few starts has looked like an absolute dominant ace. He's been in the World Series. He's won a World Series. He's been to 2. He's won 1. Charlie Morton is a stud. He is, and in my opinion, when it comes to that first matchup between Morton and Burns, as great as Burns has been this year, the last time Atlanta played Burns, obviously it was last time we played Milwaukee was right after the trade deadline. And after Atlanta had added those new bats, Milwaukee won the game, but the Braves got 4 runs off of Burns. And the bullpen just absolutely choked it for Atlanta.
And that was really before these bats started really connecting. I mean, before they got chemistry in the clubhouse and before and the bats really started churning out runs.
And I mean, that was not as hot. Yeah, again, that was not as hot of a Braves offense as it was before. The Brewers offense wasn't doing great at that time either. But the difference is the Brewers offense still isn't very good. They've got 3 or 4 guys that are having good seasons. You got Avisel Garcia, you got Willie Adames, you got Luis Arias, and then Yelich has been up and down this year. If Yelich gets back to his MVP form, Atlanta's in some big trouble. But if he keeps playing like he's been playing this year, then Atlanta's in a good spot. I mean, I think Atlanta can at least get 90% from their starting pitching as Milwaukee can. I think bullpens are about equal, but I think the offense for Atlanta is just that much better. And then Corbin Burns has dominated, but I have a feeling that cutter, which has been dominant all year, could get hit out a little bit from Atlanta. You got guys that are pull hitters, which is the worst thing for a guy that pitches cutters, especially pull hitters from the inside. Freddie Freeman could have 1 or 2 bombs against Corbin Burns. That's my spicy take for that first game. I really do believe game 1, Freddie Freeman hits 2 home runs and Atlanta wins 4-1. And
No, you can go. I'm sorry.
So I think that they win game 1. I think they do drop game 2. I think Max Fried pitches well against Brandon Woodruff, but I think Woodruff pulls it out just because I think that they're not going to drop both games in Milwaukee. I think game 3, Ian Anderson will outpitch Freddie Peralta. They've both been very good, but we've seen Ian Anderson do it in the playoffs before. We haven't seen Freddie Peralta do it. And then game 4, I just think when you're up 2-1 and you have a home game, you're going to win the series usually. So I don't see Atlanta dropping it. It will probably be Morton back on the mound against Burns again. At that point, it'll either be that or they'll go Noah versus Hauser, one or the other. And I really do think that Atlanta pulls it off in 4. I think it's going to be a very good series. I think Atlanta wins in 4, but I could easily see it going Milwaukee's way as well. I think that first game is going to mean a lot. And we'll kind of see who's going to win the series, I think, from game 1. If Atlanta can hit Burns, Atlanta will possibly even sweep. But if Atlanta can't hit Corbin Burns, they could also get swept. I think Atlanta wins in 4. I think they beat Burns, lose to Woodruff, and then win the next 2.
Yeah, I agree. I think Braves just have such hot bats right now. I mean, yeah, Burns is 2.443 ERA, but I mean, like you said, the Braves put 4 runs earlier this year when their offense wasn't necessarily clicking yet. And I think the Braves with their hot bats, I think they can really, if they get a run or 2 early, their confidence in Milwaukee will be shot.
And I think I look at the Phillies series. Obviously, the Phillies are not anywhere near the team that Milwaukee is. But you look at the Zach Wheeler game 1 of that series to end the year. Zach Wheeler is the only guy that's competing. Well, he's one of the only 2 guys that are competing with Corbin Burns along with Max Scherzer. Those are the only 3 guys that are actually competing for the Cy Young, the NL at this point. And against Zach Wheeler, Atlanta got 2 runs when needed. That's all they needed because Charlie Morton was able to deal.
Yeah, I don't think Morton gave up a single run that game, did he?
He pitched a shutout. Well, at least there's 7. And because of that, I mean, if Morton puts a performance close to that out against Burns, Atlanta's going to be in anything. Again, if I said that if this series took place a month ago, I think Milwaukee sweeps Atlanta. But I think because the starting pitching's gotten that much better in Atlanta in the last month, as well as the bullpen's been pitching better. I think at first, I think if Williams didn't get hurt, I think the Brewers beat Atlanta. But I think that Williams getting hurt, again, it makes it an 8-inning game instead of a 7-inning game. All season has been a 7-inning game for Milwaukee because you cannot get a hit off of Hader. The guy's giving up a 124 average against him. And then Devin Williams was also pitching out of his mind with a 2.3 ERA as a setup guy, which the thing is, setup guys and closers, their ERAs are usually a little bit higher, even though they are the best pitchers because teams are playing desperate, so they're swinging at everything. So, I mean, you lose a guy like that, and as good as Brad Boxberger has been this year, as good as a bunch of those guys have been, I just don't think their bullpen is going to be anywhere near as deadly as they were before.
So right now we got Giants and Braves and NLCS.
And then we got Giants and Braves in the NLCS.
And then we got Tampa and Houston and ALCS.
Yeah, we both have Houston going on. So.
Houston advancing.
And then so Atlanta and San Fran. Again, we're both coming from a biased perspective as an Atlanta fan. If Atlanta was in this playoffs, we'd be a lot less biased, I can guarantee it. So I have a very shocking thing here. I think we'll be different I think we'll probably both have the same pick, but I think we also will I think my games will be a lot more surprising. I have Atlanta in 5. My thing is, look at the last few games. Look at the last few Atlanta and San Fran has played. When Atlanta went to San Fran, they won 2 of 3. And their bats lit up the pitching. San Fran played Atlanta again, and San Fran won 2 of 3, so they've split the season series right down the middle. But you look at those games, Atlanta was 1 pitch away in 2 of those losses from winning the game. I mean, if those 2 pitches go Atlanta's way, they're 5-1 in the season series. And I just think if you tell me if you look at pitching matchups, which I think is where you can see a lot of the 90% of your playoff picks are going to be, well, maybe not 90%, maybe 75% of playoff picks can be based off of pitching matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Morton versus Gosman, I think it's virtually a split right down the middle. Fried versus Logan Webb, as good as Logan Webb's been this year, I think at this point, Max Fried is by far the pick there.
And yeah, Descafani.
That's how I thought that was right. I mean, I was like, I've been saying that, and I assume that's right.
Against Descafani versus Anderson. I mean, I think that's probably give it Ian if he's playing like he's been playing the last couple weeks.
If Anderson deals like he did last year in LCS, I think the Braves win that game.
And then obviously with it being a best of 7, you probably go to your 4th pitcher at that point. And I trust Noah as a 4th pitcher compared to, I don't know who the Giants have and goes their 4th pitcher right now.
I don't know who they have for their 4th pitcher.
So I mean, I think Atlanta can get it done in 5. I think Freddie Freeman's going to get some revenge. I mean, and again, back to experience. Kevin Gosman's never been in the situation. Logan Webb's never been in the situation. Charlie Morton and Max Fried. Charlie Morton's won a World Series and been to 2. Max Fried was a game away from the World Series last year and has a chip on his shoulder. Same with Ian Anderson. And Atlanta was 1 game away from the World Series last year. They were up 3-1. Up 3-1. And then the reason that Atlanta lost last year after being up 3-1 is due to Soroka's injury last year. You were down a pitcher and you ended up having to pitch Kyle Wright and
Bryce Wilson.
Bryce Wilson.
I mean, Wilson had a really impressive outing for that one time, but then Kyle Wright gave.
Like, you can't pitch Brian. You can't pitch. I understand Bryce Wilson pitched well, but you can't pitch Bryce Wilson and Kyle Wright in the NLCS. You just can't do it. And I understand. And I'm not blaming Brian Snitker at all. His hands were tied. He didn't have any other options at that point. But it was something that. But I think that also goes to show Atlanta has a guy like Noah now. Atlanta. I mean, Anderson was their number 2 last year, if I'm not mistaken.
He was number 2.
Now he's the number 3. So, I mean, if you go only 3 pitchers, if you pitch Charlie on a little bit short rest, I think he'll be fine. But if you decide not to pitch him on a short rest and you want to have his full self in game 5, you've got Noah. And Noah's been a little bit inconsistent lately. That's one of the worries I do have about him. But if Noah's dealing, Noah's just as good as anybody in the league. If that slider is hitting spots, no one can touch him. So, I mean,
if Noah's dealing, then he will likely only give up about a run.
If Noah's dealing, he's better.
He has that much potential.
If Noah's dealing,
he's on. He's better than Anderson.
I would say he's up there. He's not on Fried's level, but he's right below it if he's on. But he also has those games where he's just way off.
He's just more inconsistent than Anderson is. That's why Anderson's at 3 spot.
And I think the bullpens are very similar. I mean, technically the Giants have a little bit better, but how they've been playing lately, I'd probably say they're pretty close. And I think the lack of star power could come back and bite the Giants this series. That's my main thing. Like, I know they have Chris Bryant, and I think he could have a big series, and Buster Posey has experience. I'm not trying to say he doesn't. The lineup has a lot of experience. The pitching does not. And that's where my issue comes with the Giants. I know the lineup has experience, but both lineups have experience. Pitching does not in San Fran, and which is why I have Atlanta in 5.
And that's crucial with bats as hot as Atlanta's right now. I mean, that's make or break in the series, really. Because I think Atlanta cannot hit on pretty much anyone right now. That's how good I think their 1-8 is in this moment. It's mind-boggling how Soler and more than half the season in Kansas City has less home runs than his stint in Atlanta. It's insane how hot he's been recently. He seems like he's batting close to 300 now. He was batting.
Since he got to Atlanta, he's hitting 292, I think is what it said, and with the 360 coming on base. So
which is insane because I believe he was only batting 220-ish when he left.
He was hitting he was in the hundreds.
Oh, he was below that. I was trying to give him some credit.
He was finally getting hot a little bit in Kansas City, hit a couple homers in a week. And then Atlanta traded for him. And he got on a good team. You'll see that a lot. That's why I feel like there's a lot of teams that don't take those shots. A lot of these power hitters, once they get to a good team, they start finding it because they feel like they're doing it for something instead of just hitting for stats.
And I think AA deserves a GM of the year. I mean, once Acuna went down, we thought I personally thought the season was over. I mean, and then AA went and re-signed Duval, which should never let him go anyways, but he learned his lesson, whatever. And then you get, a clubhouse guy in Peterson that can hit nukes when he needs to, Jocktober they call him for a reason, that has a lot of playoff experience, which can obviously definitely come in handy when it comes time. And Rosario has been hitting low. I mean, he can play a couple positions. I have a good feeling about this Atlanta team. It's a weird year. It's just a weird feeling I haven't had yet.
So who you got in how many games?
We're still on this. We're still on the San Fran series, San Fran Atlanta series.
You didn't give me a prediction yet.
I think Atlanta in 6.
Atlanta in 6.
Atlanta in 6. I just think Atlanta has. I think Noah's going to show up. I think the experience he's going to get. He may get a game or so, game and a half before they get to that point. And I don't know. He has so much potential. I just want to believe in him. And I think the Braves can. I think they can lean on him, rest him, allow Morton to be fully healthy for that game 5, and then you'll have Freed for that game 6, and then Anderson for game 7 again. If Snicker decides to go that way, I'm confident that our bats can hit just enough, because with that rotation, I feel like on average we'll only give up at most 2 or 3 runs in the playoffs. I think that's how good our rotation is if they're on. This is if they're on, and I believe they will be. What's your projection? Do you have in 7? Do you have in 6?
5. I think Atlanta in 5. Good. So Houston, Atlanta.
Houston, Atlanta in the World Series. I'm standing by it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. No, not many people would project this. And I feel like not many annuals project this right this second. But I think with the performance that one specific team will have in 7 games, they will win in 7. I think Freddie Freeman will come back. I mean, I think he's a lock to come back, but I think the Braves win in 7 and beat Houston and win their first championship in Atlanta in 26 years. I think this team is getting hot. They got hot at the right time. There was a point, I believe they win 11 of the last 12. 11 of the last 12, and no one's talking about it. And Atlanta always does. Last year we did really well, and no one was really talking about us, and no one really had us even to compete with the Dodgers, let alone win 3 games. That's when they do their best, is when they're on the radar. So I'm just really confident in this team, and I think they can go a long ways. If their pitching's on, their bats are going to be on regardless. What's your take on the World Series?
For me, I think you got 2 amazing storylines if this happens. Number one, we got 3 amazing storylines. You've got number one, you got Atlanta with the worst record of all the teams in the playoffs making it all the way to the World Series. That's the number one storyline. Kind of like the Nationals in 19, which again, that was the last full season we had, and you had the wild card team go all the way to the World Series and win it. You have Houston in the first full season. I mean, last year was the first season after they got caught cheating, and they went to the World Series. And now in the first full season back, they're back in the World Series, a chance to win it. And then you got Atlanta's win for Ronald. Everyone counted him out when Ronald Acuna goes down, and they found a way to get back in it and win the division. So again, we've already disclaimed our biases here. I mean, we already are Braves fans, and we've made that clear, and we've obviously said that. So I could see this series going 1 of 2 ways. Both ways, I think it goes 7 games. I don't see it not going 7 games. Houston will be the home team. I think starting pitching advantage does go to Atlanta. I think Morton, Freed, and Anderson's a little bit better than Garcia, Urquidy, McCullers, and Greinke. I mean, Greinke's getting up there in age. He's not as polished as he was before. Obviously, home field's big in the playoffs, especially if it's a home field like Houston, especially with as ruckus as that crowd's going to be. Obviously, no COVID restrictions in Texas. So obviously that's not going to be any issues. Not going to be any in Atlanta either, but of course there's only 3 in Atlanta, 4 in Houston. I really think, I mean, it comes down to who I think is going to win game 7. I think the home team is going to win every game up until game 7. Game 7 is going to be nuts. I think you're probably, the way the pitching matchups are going to work out, I think you could see Atlanta try to go just 3-3, pitching a little bit short rest for everybody. 3 games, 3 pitchers, and then have Morton for the last game. Or you could see him go your first 4, including Enoa, and then see if you can close it out with like an Enoa, like just something like that, and then make sure you have either Fried or Morton for that last game. But I think you could see that. But also I could see Houston. The thing about Houston, I think all their starting pitchers are about on the same level. I don't think you have that guaranteed lockdown ace in Houston, which is why I think the starting pitching is Atlanta's favor. Bullpen, I think they're about equal. I'd probably give the advantage to Houston by just a little bit. I just trust Kendall Graveman and Ryan Presley at the end of games a little bit more than I do Will Smith. It could just, obviously Will Smith had a great end of the year by ERA wise, but eventually those hard hit balls are going to get down and are going to cost you. And I think against an Astros lineup where there's literally no holes, you can't pitch around anybody, it could come back to cost them. In lineups, I think they're about equal. Both, I think they're 2 of the 3 deadliest lineups in all of baseball. They're up there with, I think it's those 2 and the Dodgers, and then the Yankees, I guess, would be in that too. I think those are your 4 most deadly lineups in baseball. And you got 2 of them right here in the World Series. I'm gonna go Atlanta in 7. I am biased, and my head tells me to go Houston, but my heart says Atlanta. Atlanta's got something weird this year. The fact that their season's not over yet is just kind of weird to begin with. They shouldn't be in this, but they are. And for me, I think a lot of it is just the matchups. Every team they face so far, I think they match up great with. If I go through the postseason picture, the crazy thing about this postseason, I think it's a complete and total crapshoot. I think you could pick any of these 10 teams to win the World Series and you have an argument. You could go with Boston because they were so hot at the beginning of the year, and then Chris Sale's coming back. Maybe they get hot and they go on a run. You could go New York because if those bats get hot, they can go on a run. You can go Tampa because they've been the best team in the AL all year, and they played just a different style of baseball than anyone else in the league. You could go Houston because they've done it. They've been there before. They've done it before. And they're just as good, if not better than they were then. Chicago's got a crazy lineup and crazy bullpen. They could get hot. They could go all the way. The Dodgers are the most talented team in the league. The Cardinals are the hottest team in the league. The Giants are the best team in the league. The Brewers have the best pitching. Then Atlanta's maybe one of the hottest teams with a good lineup. You could literally pick any of these teams, and I don't think anyone would be crazy to pick anybody. I think your lowest odds, if I was honestly making a guess, I would say my lowest odds for any World Series champion here would probably be the Red Sox. But they're not a bad team. None of these teams are bad playoff teams. There's some years where you look at a playoff team and you're like, that team has no chance to win a World Series. Like the Twins, even though they have 100 wins, you look at them and you're like, that's not a playoff team. Like you ask somebody who you think is going to win the playoffs, the Twins last year or the Braves this year, you're going to choose the Braves this year.
Most definitely. And I think I have a 2019 vibes for the Braves. Like the Nationals, I just feel like the Braves are getting hot at the right time. They have something to play. Obviously every team in October has something to play for. Is that World Series ring you put on your finger. But the Braves are playing for Ronald Acuna.
Mm-hmm.
And they're playing to essentially keep Freddie in Atlanta. There's 2 things essentially they're playing for. I don't think Freddie's going anywhere. And I think winning the division is going to keep him here because that AA showed him by getting all his acquisitions that, hey, we're not going to lay down. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to try to, win this division and go deeper in the playoffs, which I think is the reason why Freddie's coming back. But they just have more things than most teams to fight for right now.
Mhm.
And with
Yeah,
that said,
I mean, that's obviously a lot to fight for, but again,
let's see.
it's the crazy. This is why baseball is so much fun in the playoffs. I mean, every out matters. I mean, my first moment of actually getting truly into baseball and actually starting to watch it every time the postseason coming out, I watch almost every game, was 2011 Cardinals Rangers Game 6. David Freese triple to tie it, then a walk-off homer in the bottom of the ninth. No, in the bottom of the 11th to win it against the Rangers. That was the moment. I was a Braves fan, never really cared that much. But that was a Cardinals game. My grandfather's a big Cardinals fan. 2 years after he passed away, they finally made it back to the World Series, and then they go off and they win the World Series. That's the type of stuff that is special about baseball, playoff baseball. Games like, I mean, last year, as much as I hated seeing it, because it cost the Braves their season, Cody Bellinger's home run in the eighth to complete the 3-1 comeback pretty much and beat the Braves. That's stuff that is playoff baseball. Like, there's certain things that are playoff baseball that just are impressive and that matter a ton, and why it's so fun. So it's going to be
Something magical is always going to happen. I said something magical is always going to happen. And real quick, before we end this, I just want your take real quick on how likely is it for Freddie Freeman to be in a Braves uniform next year?
95%.
95? I think it's at least 90. I just really think with that, when we won the NL East, with that moment of him being in Atlanta and just the way the fans came out and that playoff atmosphere, that clinching game was, and he's too established in Atlanta. I don't see him going anywhere. I think they'll figure out a contract. I've just heard some rumors within working there with an organization. I've just been hearing rumors recently that they're going to re-sign with the playoffs. They've already established it that there's going to be high negotiations at the playoffs. So just pay the man, please.
I mean, again, the reason I don't say 100, I don't think he wants to go anywhere else. I think earlier in the year, I may have said that I thought he might want to go to San Diego to be with Tatis, with his son, loving him and stuff, because he's a family man. I mean, I think that was a good thought, and probably was not that far off the table when Atlanta was really bad for a bit. But now, I mean, Atlanta's stepped up. San Diego fell apart. You have managerial craziness there in San Diego, so I don't think San Diego's really on the books. I think Freddie's too competitive to go to LA. I mean, I think he's too competitive to go to the Yankees. I think his only options. I think he could go to the highest bidder, but I really do believe as long as Atlanta just pays him, then he'll stay in Atlanta. I don't think he has any desire to be anywhere else. I think he just wants to get paid, which he's earned it. The guy's hit 300 like almost every year of his career, it feels like. And he's been in a Braves uniform the whole time, and Chipper's been a mentor to him for years. Man, Atlanta had some different negotiation issues with Chipper at some points as well, and he never left a Braves uniform. I think the same thing's gonna happen with Freddie. I think he's gonna end up back in a Braves uniform. And I mean, in my whole thought there, as cheap as Liberty Media is, the money they lose from from ticket sales by not re-signing Freddie would make up for it immediately. So I think he's gonna end up back in a Braves uniform. If not, it's a tragedy. It just really is. I know that he's getting up there in age, but he's only 31 years old. And every team needs a couple of veteran leaders. And if one of those veteran leaders are your superstars, it makes it even better. So
I think he has at least 5 Freddie MVP years left. I mean, 300 batting average left, in my opinion. I mean, I just think he's such a competitor and he's such a gamer. I don't really see him falling off within the next 5 years. Maybe next 7 or so. I mean, maybe slipping, but next 5 years, I think he'll be just as good.
Well, that's a conversation for after these playoffs. Hopefully, these playoffs and with the Braves win. But most of all, I hope these playoffs are just a fun playoff season. It's been a great baseball season so far. A bunch of surprises, a bunch of ups and downs from many teams, some surprise great teams. I mean, who would have ever thought at the beginning of the year that their number one seeds would be the Rays and the Giants? I mean,
And also, I mean, the Mets and the Padres almost looked unstoppable at some points, and then neither one was in the playoffs. So that just
not even
shows
close, actually.
how wild.
So it's gonna be a fun
It shows
season.
you how wild baseball.
You got teams that have won 17 games in a row, sneaking into a wild card spot. I mean, it's gonna be a fun playoffs. I'm excited. And before we get going, update on the Yankees Red Sox. The Yankees just got their first run as 3-1 Yankee, no 3-1 Red Sox. So we'll see how that ends out.
What inning is it right now?
At bottom of the sixth. So the Yankees have 3 more innings, get 2 runs. So
It's gonna be exciting.
yeah,
Let's see what happens in the
but yeah.
three more innings.
So we'll catch y'all on our next podcast. Our next podcast is gonna be a little bit of a special podcast. It's gonna have all 3, me, Colton, and Caleb, and we're gonna be talking about our favorite sports moments of our favorite and least favorite sports moments of our lives, the most impactful sports moments ever. So y'all will be able to see our positive and negative emotions just showing out. So
It's gonna be exciting. I am not super thrilled, but I think everyone knows.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well, thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll have another podcast that'll be talking about the NL and ALCSs and seeing if our predictions are right or if we look like idiots. It could be either one. So
It's gonna be either one. It's gonna look like we're geniuses or we're complete idiots. There's no just middle ground.
not at all.
No.
But yeah, so we'll see y'all next time, and peace out.